I'm Brindarica Bose. I live in Poland. I'm an artist, an art lover since my childhood. Since the time my mother gave me my brush and my colors to paint, I've been painting happily. I live in Switzerland for more than 15 years now, and for the last 6 years, I have also been teaching in Mikroclub Schule Art. I teach children as well. My art forms, if I talk about the journey that I've had in art, it has evolved from learning the basics of drawing in different schools. I also learned art in Kolkata when I was living there, then in Ranchi, and later on when I took up studies, I came here, and when I was working, I have a family. I always fell back on art as something that I could rely on, something that I loved doing in my free time, and later on it also became part of my profession. So the way my art has evolved is from drawing to watercolors to pastels, acrylics, abstract a little bit. And I indulge a lot in urban sketching, which is sketching and painting on the spot. So I've also been part of the Urban Sketches Symposium, giving lectures there, workshops there to the participants this year in September. And lately I have, because of the storytelling aspect, and also because I'm very much interested in different mythological stories of India, and I've been reading a lot of books, Upanishads and Puranas and so on. I have found so many stories that can be wonderfully depicted through art, because not everyone has the time to read books, and we have a very rich culture of different forms of folk art in India. I mean, if I just pick up the top 10 or the most popular folk arts, I could talk about the Kalighat painting, for example, Kalighat art style, which of course, as per the name, it originated from Kalighat. And although it started off with depicting gods and goddesses on paper and canvas, it went on to depict even the social reforms in Bengal. For example, when the British were there and the social reforms were taking place, so they used art, the artists, they used art as a way to say something, to show that they are revolting against something, or how is the society evolving. So you would see a zamindar sitting with a glass of wine, with a peg of wine, and so on. So it was not limited to gods and goddesses only, and I could very much relate to that, because in my art form, like if you look at this painting that I recently finished, you find Draupadi, who said that I will not tie my hair for 13 years. She didn't tie her hair for 13 years till she can quench her revenge from the Kauravas. So here she's holding a peg of maybe blood from the Kauravas, and here I have Sita, who is depicted sitting and listening to Radha and to Draupadi, and they are all together for Lakshmi Pooja. So it's kind of contemporary, where I've brought in the feminine characters from mythology, from famous Indian art, epics, and I've tried to say something about how these characters have been treated, or how we look at them, and so on. So there is where the depiction of the artist, or what the artist is trying to say, comes in. So even if I'm using mythological characters. So for example, in this painting, my mother had once mentioned that why don't you paint about Ras Leela? And in Vrindavan there is this temple where it is said that Sri Krishna still comes and he indulges in Ras Leela with Radha. So here what I did is I just depicted the Dash Avatar, the 10 avatars of Krishna in different forms. So and there are such interesting stories, if I may say. Like Kalki, for example, Kalki is shown here. It is said that during the Samudra Manthan, he held the mountain to which they could churn for the nectar, which was divided amongst the gods and the demons. And then of course we have the Matsya here. You cannot see it fully, but Matsya it also relates to somehow the evolution of mankind, and there is some resemblance at some spot. So it is said that how he came and he rescued Manu to save mankind. Then you have, for example, Vamana. The story of Vamana is also very interesting. Like when Mahabali, he was a king, and the gods didn't want demonic king in that sense, and the gods wanted someone to rescue the world from him. So they sent Vamana, who was also a form of Vishnu, an avatar of Vishnu, hence Dashavatar. And he came and he said, I would just ask for that much land which I can cover in 3 steps. Now the king thought, oh, he's a dwarf, how much can he ask for? And then in his first step, but this dwarf formed Vishnu. He grew into a large man, into a giant man, and his first step covered the earth, the second step covered the heavens, and the third step, the king himself gave his head to put his feet on. So there are such interesting stories, and of course I've shown here Radha and Krishna. This is the last night when Krishna decides to leave Vrindavan and go to Mathura. He is sitting by the side of Yamuna, and here is Vrinda. Now since my name is Brindarica, and my father was a Vaishnavite and my mother gave me the name Brindarica, which means rich in Brinda. Rika is although a Spanish term, but nevertheless. So here I have somehow put myself in also Brinda in there. And then we have Lakshmi Pooja. This one was I drew during Lakshmi Pooja. This painting I drew during Saraswati Pooja, where I'm showing that Ma Durga, she has 2 daughters, Lakshmi and Saraswati, and she's tying the hair of Saraswati, and for the puja. And this is also a kind of a custom Indian culture where you tie the daughter's hair during evening, during darkness, and it's also showing depicting her spirit, Saraswati's spirit, because she depicts knowledge, wisdom, and she's also independent. So that is how I have portrayed her here. Like society is trying to tie her hair, or it's kind of portrayal. And so I would, going back to my first subject, which is folk art of India, I think my paintings are also pretty much in the Kalighat painting style, where I'm using gods and goddesses to depict a social form or to say something about society. So there are these such interesting forms, folk art forms. For example, of course, the Wadi. I have a paper here so that I don't forget any forms of art. For example, the Warli style that I was just mentioning, it's one of the most ancient style of art, where we always had a black or a dark background, and the motifs, like someone hunting, it's dated almost 2500 BCE. So the motifs were like someone hunting, someone farming, and so on, with white. So you have a dark background and you have something like a pictogram or a stickman, stickman figures. So the Warli art is also very, very old, perhaps one of the oldest, and it is found in the Western Ghat. Then of course we have the Rajasthan's Fad style, which is scroll painting with gods and goddesses. And I have lived in Bihar, I've lived in Ranchi, and Madhubani art is a very beautiful form of art which originated from King Janaka's land, Mithila or Bihar, and there also the characters or the figures are very much related to God, and in fact we wouldn't have known about this style until and unless around the 1930s there was an earthquake, and it was by chance that the British, when they went to the spot where there was this earthquake, they found some broken houses, and at the walls, in the walls there were these beautiful paintings. And that's when, you know, they got to know about Madhubani art. So these people, indigenous, you know, art form, which survived, and it is still there. People still paint in the villages. So it's also important to say what is the distinction between fine art and folk art. Folk art is generally by indigenous people, native people from a village. It's rather simple to decipher in that sense, because you have very clear lines and figures, very much related to gods and goddesses, or a story, a mythological story. It's richly based in Indian mythology, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and our epics. And of course, fine arts is different. It is, you know, it's completely a different genre. So folk art is often done by village women and using organic colors. It used to be painted mostly by organic colors like organic dyes and so on. For example, Patachitra in Bengal, you know, they used to draw in scrolls using turmeric for yellow, for example, or they would take the red soil, red color from the soil, or green, even cow dung was used sometimes, you know, for color. So they really looked at organic or nature. So that's why I find it very beautiful, because it is very simple and it depicts a lot, and it is richly and deeply connected to Indian culture, to Indian mythology, which is so rich. There are so many stories which are untold, which are not known, and so there is so much of possibility I find in folk art. You know, like you can depict so many stories. Like people don't end up reading in nowadays. You know, people have a shorter attention span as well, and social media is great, but it also has its negative effects. People end up scrolling or just hyperlinking from this to that, and it's so necessary that we get some time to, you know, to experiment, to dive deep into art and culture. There are so many things that we can do in art and culture, and folk art is a very rich topic, and I'm extremely passionate about talking about it, so I may not even stop sometime. Then of course there's the kalamkari form of art. You see a lot of kalamkari designs coming in textiles nowadays from Bangalore. So, you know, there also you have motifs like kings or Rama or Krishna, and they are drawn very elaborately with very nice delicate brushwork. Kalamkari means with pen, basically. So, you know, it's kalam is a pen. So it's this penmanship, this artmanship, this form of art, which is very beautiful. And it has nowadays, you know, Indian textiles, they are also kind of trying to promote this form of art by bringing it into daily use, like saris or tops and so on. And Tanjore painting, of course, everyone knows about it. It's a very old form of art, and we see these rich paintings in temples or in old palaces. The difference in Tanjore painting is it's rich in the sense that it really has a gold foil, a gold shimmer to it, or gold color is added to it, you know, showing the richness also of the kingdom. And so there are these amongst folk art, you see these various forms and differentiations that I just mentioned now, and yeah, so it's a product from an indigenous culture, and it's very interesting. So folk art is one genre that I'm very much interested in, and I really would love to explore more if I get the time. And I think more and more artists, they should take up this topic and try to explore, read more. And all my paintings are original, based on my original thoughts and my ideas, which means I don't copy from any motive. I don't use Pinterest or any other resources. I read books, I read Upanishads, or I read books, and whatever I read, whatever touches my heart, whatever connects with me, I try to create a language of colors and penmanship and put them in my canvas. So, of course, I am also very much interested in other forms of art, like, as I mentioned, urban sketching. Even today, I will be going for an urban sketching trip. at 8 Zurich, provided the weather stays good. And I love oil painting. For example, here on this side you see a small painting with a white frame. I painted that when my son, youngest son, was still a child, and I had to stay awake till midnight. So it's a still life with oil colors. And you have a book, Unaccustomed Earth by Jhumpa Lahiri, a cup of tea, a watch which is showing 10 minutes past 12. So I love still lifes in oil colors. I love watercolors, and that is what I also love teaching very much, because watercolor has this transparent quality. It has this soul connection. It helps you heal somewhere, connect to yourself, meditate, concentrate, and it is so relieving. And especially during the pandemic, when a lot of people have they stayed indoors, it becomes challenging. It becomes mental health is also a topic, and I think art is something which helps us grow, which helps us nurture. Now, coming back to growth and nurturing, I would very much like to mention about a project that I am doing with Robin Hood Academy in Ranchi. It's a wonderful, I have a wonderful set of young students. Surbhi, I would mention her name, and her team. They connect me with street children, say about 60 children, and I give online classes to them every weekend where I'm teaching them art. Simple things, like last time in the last class we tried to draw Diwali. Once after my visit to Arles in France, which is where Van Gogh lived, and I had a motive. We all drew sunflowers, for example. So nurturing art, giving back art to the society is so important. They don't have colors, so I just send them colors, and it is so amazing to see the results they have produced. So I would very much also urge our viewers to connect to the society, to give back whatever you can. If you can teach them how to draw, how to paint, who knows, maybe that will be a skill that they will nurture, which will help them in future. And more than that, I mean, we are at a position, we are at a social position where we can reach out and do our part. So Robin Hood Academy, I will also show a small clip and some photographs, and I will also show you some of my other paintings. You can have a look, you can contact me if you want some art form, if you want to learn about something. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I wish you all a happy Diwali. Namaste. Brindarica Bose.